Welcome to Permission to Thrive. I'm your host, Suzi Lula. As a spiritual therapist for over 20 years, I have the honor and privilege of ushering women and mothers just like you on a journey from simply surviving to powerfully thriving. I also have the honor of raising our son, Will, who is now a young adult, with my longtime partner, Jamie, so I'm right there on the journey with you. Consider this your personal sanctuary, your space to meet your heart, embrace your messy, and come home to your most authentic, extraordinary self. My hope is that you leave resourced and inspired because you are here to shine. Welcome to Permission to Thrive. I can't wait to introduce you to mental health advocate, conscious parenting, and soul care coach, Joye Madden. Today, we talk about eradicating the stigma of mental health and how to talk openly about it, the importance of safety where mental health issues are concerned, how to take those first steps from mental illness to mental health, and how to break generational patterns. We talk about some real examples and practices that you can take with you today. So if you or anyone you know has ever struggled with mental health issues, may this be a lifeline for you to remind you that you are not alone. So sit back, get a cup of tea, a journal, maybe light a candle. This is your sanctuary. This is your time to receive. Welcome everyone to Permission to Thrive. I'm your host, Suzi Lula, and I'm so excited to introduce you all to Joye Madden today. We are going to be diving into the topic of mental illness and mental health. So welcome, Joye.
Oh, thank you, Suzi. I'm so honored to be here with you today.
I can't wait to dive into this conversation. And I want to introduce you all to Joye. I'm going to read you her formal introduction, but you are a dear friend. You have been a client for many years. And so we both share this passion for mental illness, mental health, and it's a topic that I think is very important and relevant to almost everyone I work with in my practice. So let me introduce you formally. Joye is a Birmingham, Alabama based coach, and I'm going to share this using the word you so you can hear me introduce you and take it in, right? So, and I'll tell you why after. So you are a Birmingham, Alabama based coach, and you share your passion for recovery. And that stems from your own personal healing journey, which began in 2006. So after watching loved ones, including your own parents and children, struggle with mental illness and addiction, you are left with a true fervor to pass on your relief, growth, and profound happiness that you found through digging into your own darkness to find your own light. 2 of your children struggle with mental health issues, which only strengthens your desire to fight against the stigma of mental illness. After countless coaching trainings, research, and mentors, you are a true advocate for families struggling with mental illness and addiction. You have continued your education, and you are a certified conscious parenting coach by Dr. Shefali, and you are a soul care coach through my coaching certification as well, soul care coach. Your work focuses on guiding parents into your own healing, practicing self-care in the midst of motherhood, and finding the appropriate resources for the entire family system. Mm-hmm. So I wanted you to hear your own bio reflected back to you for a particular reason. First, I want to hear how it felt to you to hear your own bio reflected back to you, because I believe that one of the biggest blocks to mental health is the ability to receive our own worth and the ability to receive in general. So I'm just interested, how did it feel to you to hear that reflected back to you?
Gosh, somehow I knew you might ask me that question when you said that, but it's weird. It's almost like I feel like you're not even talking about me, right? Because I know what I've been through. I know what I'm working on. I know what I've done. I know I help families. And yet I still sometimes feel that feeling of like, oh, wait, that's not me. I haven't really done that much work. I mean, it's like that inner critic starts talking, really like, who do you think you are? You haven't done that much work. You're not that good enough to be able to help these families.
Mm. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. You are an expert in your own right. You work with families, you work with teens, you work with individuals, you work at rehab centers. And so I want individuals to hear that there is no line that we draw in the sand where, oh, this is mental health. And then over here, there's mental illness. Mental health, mental illness is a spectrum. And we're all on it every day, in my humble opinion. And so I wanted everyone to hear, and I want everyone to hear listening. Mental illness is such an important conversation to have, and there is such a stigma about it. And we want everyone listening to hear that there isn't some line, some container, oh, today I'm in mental health. And the next hour, oh, I'm mentally in mental illness. This is a spectrum. And my intention today is really to have people not be afraid of the term mental illness. My intention is to have people actually befriend mental illness or the idea of mental illness, because until we can become in a healthy relationship with something, it will always have power over us. So my intention is to have people be in a soothing relationship with illness, to find that the real medicine for illness, in my opinion, is soul medicine. It's the medicine of the soul. So I know you share a lot of this with me, and I would love for everyone listening to hear a little bit about your journey. What led you into the world of mental health? You're so passionate about it. Tell us a little bit about what stands out to you on your journey.
Yeah. Can I go back to something really quickly?
Please.
You just shared, because it made me think about, so my son is on the spectrum, and he was diagnosed when he was, I think, 10 years old. And I remember being so afraid to have him tested because I didn't want to put that label on him, right? Because I thought that it would identify him as something, that people wouldn't like him, that he would be ashamed of who he is, and all these things, right? And so I remember when we finally decided to have the testing, and when we told him about it, that it opened my world into, we don't have to be ashamed about this. We're opening it up because now, oh my gosh, now we have all these resources. Now we can pull from all these things where before we didn't know how to help him. And then I was also thinking about that in terms of anxiety, which is something that all three of my kids have and that I struggle with. And I so often say, especially my younger daughter, who's 15, who struggles with anxiety, and she also has trichotillomania, but is in recovery and just had her 100th day today. She showed me on her phone of not picking her eyebrows and eyelashes. So I had to throw that in. But, instead of like, I would always say she has an anxiety disorder. She has an anxiety disorder. And while trichotillomania is a symptom of anxiety, sometimes it's like, I feel like I should stop labeling her as having an anxiety disorder when there are days that she's not anxious. And so, can we, for people who are like ashamed to say that have anxiety or I have depression, it's like, can we turn it around and say, you know what, today I'm feeling really anxious. And how do you be with that part of you? Like you said, with self-care and self-compassion, instead of saying, I have anxiety, because the next day you may not feel like you have anxiety. You may be having a great day. And so just having that conversation and being comfortable around talking about it, because what do you think, Suzi? How many people in this world really do have some form of anxiety?
Absolutely. And I think this is why I really wanted to open up this conversation, because what you're saying is so accurate. The more comfortable we can be talking openly about it, whether it's talking openly to someone else about what's going on with us, or whether it's talking openly with our kids, if we happen to be parents, it's the talking openly and comfortably. And so there has been such a stigma about mental health, mental illness. And one of the things that I think is so important is moving from, it isn't whether we label ourselves or don't label ourselves. It's what kind of relationship can we have? And like you're saying, in the moment, I'm like right now, I'm totally relaxed. An hour ago, I might have been totally anxious, right? So, what we want to really open up the conversation to, the possibilities of, can we be in conversation around this? And it kind of leads me to the next question, or one of the questions I really wanted to hear, your insights about. We call it mental illness, and it's always interesting to me, mental illness. I really see it as a relationship around emotions.
Mhm.
So I'd be interested to hear your perspective about that, because you're talking about anxiety, picking, stress, the spectrum. And to me, in my experience working with clients, this has so much to do with our relationship with emotions. So could you speak to that at all, if you?
Gosh, that's such a good question. You know, you think about illness, and I think about you're sick, right? Or maybe someone has, they're struggling with something like cancer or diabetes or something like that, or they've had a stroke and that type of illness, or they have the flu or whatever. And when we talk about mental illness, I sort of agree with you. I think that we can look at it as almost like your brain is ill, but it's tied to emotions and it's tied to feelings and it's tied to trauma. The first question that you asked is, what happened and why I got started in this. And it was, I grew up in a family of addiction and mental illness. My grandparents were in addiction. My parents were in addiction. My mom had some mental health struggles throughout her life. And I was an only child, and it affected me profoundly. And I didn't realize how much it affected me until later in my life, as I started doing this work. I thought it was just normal. I thought being in a brain fog, I thought being tired, I thought being, a perfectionist, being a controller, being all the things that I did. I thought that was just normal. And then as I got into more serious relationships, even especially with my husband, I realized that, wait a minute, that's not benefiting me in my relationship. And, my marriage was surrounded around addiction as well. And then when my kids started, and my kids, thankfully, have not struggled with addiction, but they all do struggle with some mental health. And, my oldest daughter, struggled with an eating disorder, suicidal ideation, depression. And that, I do think of it as being in some ways mentally ill, like something in her brain wasn't working the way maybe someone else's brain worked that had not experienced trauma in her own life as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that when I talk about befriending this part of the brain that would have us act or feel in a certain kind of a way, that's why I like to include the conversation of emotions, because I find in our culture and even with clients, it's very challenging often for people to talk comfortably about feelings of shame, feelings of guilt, the feelings that have been left after a trauma. I feel I'm not worthy. I feel like I don't matter. I feel like it wouldn't matter whether I'm here or not here, whether I live or don't live. I don't feel worthy. I don't even feel worthy of the space. And so I believe that as a culture, as we can become more comfortable talking about the different emotions, the different mental states with our children, with each other, still culturally, boys are taught, don't be boys, don't be sensitive, don't cry. And girls are taught, be nice and be polite and don't make a scene and don't cause a conflict, and all of the different cultural messages. God forbid, someone is trans or feels, feels like they are a little out of the box in their social circles, or there's just so much culturally coming at us. And in our families of origin, as you said, in your family, you grew up, my heart is just so open and compassionate for you, thinking of you as an only little girl in a house where you experienced mental illness and addiction, and you were inundated in that inner environment. And so you just thought it was, quote, normal. You just thought, oh, that's what it is. And then, of course, you get into a marriage and it's reflecting the same unhealed and generational traumas and processes. And, I'm so grateful that you have the comfort level to speak about it, because I think for anyone listening right now, as we're saying, any one of us can feel anxiety, depression at any moment. And so to get to where we feel more comfortable talking about it, even within ourselves, taking off that stigma, to me is step one. Is that, what would you consider step one? If you had to say a step,
Gosh, a step. Yeah, for sure. I think it's finding, for me, it was finding that person, that safe person that I could talk to start to even open up about how I felt. Because, when you grow up in addiction, the rules are don't talk, don't feel, don't trust, don't let anybody know what's going on in the inside of your house. As long as the outside of your house and what you're wearing and the way you present yourself is perfect, then no one will ever know. And my grandfather was a big businessman, so no one could know what really was going on the inside of our home. So I think once you find that person to start to, that safe person, and start having that dialogue, and where you can all of a sudden, be able to say something that's holding you captive and that's holding you in shackles, because that's how it felt, and you're so afraid to say something because you're going to break the rules of what your family told you. And for me, I was a rule follower and I was the perfect little girl. So breaking the rules was very, very scary for me. But once you do, and, a lot of it started when I entered, one of the 12-step programs. That was sort of my first place of being able to say, I don't know what to do. I'm unhappy and I don't know what to do. And so all of a sudden, people start to nod their heads and people start to understand you. And then all of a sudden that shame just kind of withers away just a little bit. And then you say something else and you get a little more brave and you get a little more courageous, and people start to validate your feelings. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted someone to say, oh my God, like, I totally understand. I'm here to help you, which is really why I do what I do today, because I swore in that moment when I was laying there in the bed with my daughter and we had come home from the hospital, and because she had threatened suicide and we were laying in the bed together, And I just stayed awake all night watching her breathe because that's all I knew to do. And I remember thinking, I don't know who to call. Like, I have no idea who to call to tell me what to do next. I was so alone. I was so isolated. I was so afraid. And, I was married to someone that um, checked out because he couldn't handle his own space and his own emotional upset. And so everything I perceived in that moment, that everything fell onto me. And I swore in that moment, I said to myself, I don't know what's going to happen from here, but I know that I will never let any mom ever have to walk this journey alone.
Mm. Oh my goodness. And you have said so many important points here. So I just want to slow it down for everyone listening. And first of all, just everyone listening, let's just all take such a unified, deep breath together and open our hearts. My heart is just so open, first of all, listening to your experience and I'm sure so many can relate. And as you're listening and reflecting on what Joy just shared, just call forward your own journey, because what we know about mental illness and all the things you've just shared about is that it's indiscriminate, right? I have clients who have Grammys on their shelves and they are dealing with the same anxiety, or like you're saying, having to present themselves in a certain way, or countless mother clients who behind the closed doors of their homes are lying there next to their children wondering, are you self-harming, are you okay, how are you doing? So first, I just want us all to take such a collective deep breath excuse me, of humanity, both for you and for ourselves. So I'll go to you first in just hearing your story about your own world of it just mattered how you all presented yourself. I just think that speaks to so many people, that we are a culture of how we present ourselves matters more than what's happening behind the doors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I wanted to do this have this conversation with you, is because I want to start speaking about what's going on behind the doors. Because I'm so fortunate, I feel like I get to do the most incredible soul work on the planet, because I get to be the people that I work with and talk to every day, while they might have Academy Awards or be some, whatever, successful in corporate business, or entrepreneurs, or stay-at-home moms doing the most important work on planet Earth. Regardless of that spectrum, we all are experiencing the same desires to feel seen, to know that our life matters, to know that we're important, to know that who we are matters. And that's what you're saying, is that you wanted to be seen. You use the quality of safety, and I think that's imperative, right? So that we find a safe individual, a safe space. You mentioned 12-step. I know it's why I am passionate about the work that I do, and I call it soul care. And I have a course called Learning the Language of Self-Compassion, because what you're speaking to is so important. It's finding safety. And often we don't have the safety inside of ourselves to even start talking about it or accept the places inside of ourselves. So if you can find another trusted person, if there are teens listening, if there are tweens listening, like if you're 9, 10, 12, 14, 18, early 20s, late 20s, 30s, whatever your age range, if you're going through something that has you feeling that you're bumping up against yourself, this quality of safety, finding a safe person, finding a safe space. It's why I wanted to have this conversation for anyone listening who ever has an inkling of like, oh my gosh, I want you to know you are not alone. And you may feel very alone. And you said it at the beginning, Joy, there are resources. I want this to be a resource among many, many, many. So anything else that I might be missing here, that you want to allude to or expand upon?
It's just like you said, it's finding those resources. And, as I've grown in this work, you know, I have realized that I have choices, right? I have choices now that I could stay stuck from my past, or I can move forward and into my future and into growth and recovery. And, you know, you've said years we've been working together. I don't know, but I know that you've been such, I can do this without crying. Like you're my non-negotiable every single week. And the growth that I've made in the last few weeks or years, even to the degree of ending my marriage and being in a house by myself and raising my kids, finding that safe person, because you're my safe person and I couldn't have done it without you. And you have, I was just talking to a friend today, and she's going through a divorce, but she went through this all alone, and she's really struggling. And you prepped me. You helped me prep me. You helped me use my trauma, the things that I have been through, and you turned those into gifts with me. And now the beautiful thing is that I get to say the buck stops here. The generational stuff that I have been through stops here. And now I get to be a good mom, a different mom, a present mom, a showing up mom. And I get to give those things to my kids that I didn't get as a kid, not blaming my parents. I know that they did the best that they could with what they had, but I have different tools. I had old tools, and now I got to throw those old tools away. Sometimes I get to throw them away. Sometimes they creep back in and pull out the new ones. And I get to use those on my kids. And there is nothing greater, in my opinion, to be able to do that. You use circle back, and we get to redo. And so I get to circle back and circle back and circle back so many times. I know how to apologize. I know how to give forgiveness. I know how to have adult conversations. I have a voice, right? A year ago, when you asked me to do this, I probably would have said, no, I'm not ready. I have a voice now that I believe if it only helps one person listening today, if it just helps one person, I have done what I needed to do.
Exactly. And you're bringing in such important, a new set of points I want to expand upon. I want to get into some of the specifics. So you're speaking about now you have these tools and practices. And I'm just wondering if you could give everyone listening, I'm imagining someone listening, and as we're saying, mental health, mental illness is a spectrum. So I know, you could be in the midst of a child who is experiencing suicidal, ideations, or it could be that you are experiencing anxiety yourself, going to, work tomorrow morning, whatever it is. I'm imagining individuals listening might be wondering, well, what does it sound like when you're able to? So just give us maybe an example of how you might be able to talk openly to one of your kids now about it, or give us a specific, or how you're able to talk to yourself now. Anything that comes to mind that could give someone a flavor of what's possible, how to use these practices and tools, what it could sound like, what it could feel like in your own day-to-day, either conversation with yourself, conversation with another.
I think for myself, and this has really taken me years to do, and I have to, even before I say it, I have to say to myself, like, without judgment, as you tell me all the time, and giving grace to myself when I don't do it perfectly. but I know the things that help me for sure are, just getting up early. And for those of you who have little kids, it's so understandable that finding that time is so incredibly hard. I've been there and I understand. But even if you get up 10 minutes before they do, give yourself just a moment of time during the day by yourself where you can just take those sips of coffee or your hot tea or whatever it is that you're drinking and journal. Or the meditation has helped me so much. There's so many apps on these phones now that you can just download something so quickly. And I don't do it every day, but I do know the days that I do it, I feel such a difference. Moving my body, exercising has been something that has been so crucial for me, because that gets out that negative energy in my body. And when I do those things for myself, I can then pass on to my kids. And just the other day, and it's funny because I know the feeling so well of what it feels like when you just have no energy and you're in this brain fog and you just feel heavy. Like Sundays right now, we're doing this on a Sunday. So I used to have like the Sunday scaries. Like I hated Sundays because I was fearful going into the week, or I had procrastinated something. And now on Sundays, today, it's like, I'm going to go out for a beautiful walk. I'm not scared of Sundays anymore. I've got to take some action. And then I get to pass it to my kids. But one of the things that I did the other day, because I was feeling good within myself, is I took a bunch of sticky notes and the girls were gone. I took a bunch of sticky notes and I wrote affirmations on the sticky notes, like 10 of them. And I went upstairs and I put them on the mirror. My girls share a bathroom, so I put them in the middle of the mirror for them to see when they got home. And you would have thought it was the most special thing that they had ever heard or seen. And they just like, oh my gosh, like, could you imagine, Susie, if your mom did that for you when you were a child? Could you even imagine? Because that's the kind of things that didn't happen to me, like I was saying. And those are the things that I can pass on, that I can do for my kids, that I wish I had received.
Give us what were some of the sticky notes? I want to hear. What were the sticky notes that you wrote and that your kids got to experience from you on that mirror?
Oh my gosh. So I don't remember all of them, but
No, just a couple.
the ones I remember was perfection does not exist, because I really need to read that every day. You are enough just as you are. You are worthy was one. You are so loved was another one. One of the ones that I said too, which was interesting because I asked my girls afterwards which one they related to, but one was, I give you permission to root for yourself.
Oh.
When I asked my youngest daughter the next day, I said, well, which one did you relate to the most? And she said that one. And I couldn't believe it, that that's the one that meant that to her. And I was like, oh, and then it was like, okay, I need to turn that around and give myself permission to root for myself just as well.
Exactly. So I love these. So let's slow that down for a moment. So just imagine everyone listening, and I know that I do say this often, like imagine if all of us, our generation, had been raised hearing these things about ourselves, right? But as you're saying, the buck stops here. I am so in agreement, non-negotiable for me. I'm seeking not to pass on these generational patterns. So what you're saying is you chose to write out some of the things that you didn't get to hear, right? You are enough exactly as you are. Perfectionism doesn't exist. I give you permission to root for yourself. I mean, if young girls don't need to hear that, I mean, everyone needs to hear that message, but young girls, I give you permission to root for yourself. I love that you did this. I love that you're saying, and I need to turn this around on myself so that I give myself permission to root for myself, right? I matter. I am enough. So maybe everyone listening, just imagine a sticky note that you need to write for yourself to put on your mirror. What would that? I know my sticky note would probably be, I am enough exactly as I am. Boom.
Yeah. And sometimes even that can be hard for people, right? Because sometimes people getting into this work don't really quite believe that yet. So the one of the ones that I put on there, and it's been the easiest one for me to start with, is you deserve to be happy.
Mm.
Like we all deserve happiness and joy in our life, no matter where we are. And I don't know, for some reason, that one resonates with me as the simplest one to believe, because it took me years to believe that I'm enough. I
Yeah.
couldn't write that. I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
It was hard.
I love what you're saying, so that, we can't, there is the fake it till you make it, but there's also the idea that if you're saying an affirmation that you don't believe, your brain chemistry isn't going to embody it anyway. A phrase I like to use is, I am willing. I
Oh,
am willing to know that I matter. I
mm,
am willing to know that I am enough exactly the way I am. I am
mm,
willing to know that in the midst of feeling like perfectionism really is a thing, it isn't a thing. Like, I'm willing to know that. In the midst of being, immersed in all the things, I'm willing to know there's another way. I'm willing to know there's another possibility. So I love what you're saying, because we want everyone to hear. We're not just saying, like, slap a sticky note on your mirror. It's like, we want it to be real, and you want to be able to really ingest it and receive it. But I
mm,
think what you're speaking about is something that's so important that I want to make sure that we cover before we complete, which is going from this spectrum of mental illness to mental health. There is, I think it feels very counterintuitive to people to think that it would be imperative to thrive when you're in the middle of dealing with mental illness. And I believe wholeheartedly that it is imperative to thrive through your journey and find ways to thrive and immerse yourself in an energy that can open up the places, even if that means to you, I just called, like you were saying earlier, I just called a safe person today. So I want to speak to this idea that you're talking about, putting these sticky notes on the mirror. I want to talk a little bit about other things. When you were sharing, it was reminding me of something we used to do at our dinner table that we had gotten from the Obamas. I think it was first in Obama's first book, about how at their table they did roses and thorns, and they'd go around the table, and every day they'd say something, great that happened to them, and then something that was challenging. I might be misquoting the story because we've made it our own in our family, so I don't exactly know the how it what the origins were. But in our family, it was important to us to speak not only about, the amazing things, but we wanted Will to be able to speak about the challenging things too, and to know that we were a safe place to bring that. And so we started the Roses and Thorns. And at some point early on, Will sort of created this thing where he would then start saying, but the the thorn became a rose at the end
mm,
of the day. So it was like, maybe he was talking about somebody was really mean to him in class, or someone said to him, you're a blah blah blah, you're a sissy, or whatever, someone said to him. And then he would talk about how then something throughout the day he would realize, or even he'd come back the next week, oh, that thorn from last week became a rose. And
mm,
I think that it's so important to immerse ourselves in this because of the quality of resilience. Because part of this idea around being mentally healthy is about knowing that, life is going to hand us what life is going to hand us. But can we find inside that resilience? And like you were saying, sometimes we're having one of those days where we can't even write that sticky note that says, I'm enough. I wouldn't even believe it. So, to immerse ourselves in the different things that can help us cultivate the muscle of resilience. And I don't know if there's any other examples. I know that you have a beautiful way of talking and speaking to each one of your kids. You have developed over the years ways of talking to them. You know, you talk to your daughter about picking, and you talk to your son about addiction and screens. And I don't know if there's anything you want to add about that could give people a flavor of, you know, what's going on in a behind the scenes of a home, you know?
Mm. You know, I think the one thing that comes to my mind as you ask me that question is, and I've learned this, and it's definitely been a practice of, one of the things that I think has made them feel the safest is when I don't go in and try to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
When they just tell me something and I go in and try to validate, you know, saying things like, wow, that must have been really scary. Like my son came home the other day and he's been struggling at school with this boy that's just being so mean to him. And so, you know, he struggles in social relationships and in social environments. And, you know, my first inkling was I wanted to go give him all the suggestions of things he needed to say, or, you know, maybe we should call the counselor, or blah, blah, blah. And instead, I just said, wow, that sounds like you had a really hard and tough day today, you know? And then I stop, I pause, I zip my lip, and then it allows them to start talking more. And I'll just say, gosh, is there anything else? Like, how did that make you feel? And I have to be careful because a lot of times my older daughter would say, mom hat, not therapist hat, or not coach hat. But it just gives them the room and the space to open up. And the other question that I ask all the time, and I just did this with my older daughter yesterday, she was sharing something with me. And my new thing I say is, do you want me to just sit here and listen, or are you asking for some suggestions? And that gives them the power to come back in and really ask for what they want.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a hug. Sometimes it's just sitting next to me and they just need to talk, you know, and they just need to get it out. Yeah. Without judgment, without criticism, with full on acceptance and validation, because we know feelings matter. And when we're taught, the way I was taught was, it wasn't okay to feel, you know, you couldn't feel angry, you couldn't feel sad. And that's what happens to us as we get depressed, right? Because depression is just that suppression of our emotions and feelings. And so to provide that safe space like I need, it just gives them permission to open up to the extent that they want to.
Yes. And I think that, you know, this could be an entire episode. So it's a great takeaway. The journey from feeling like you need to fix it to the journey to being able to be present. Like you said, zip your lip. I often just put my fingers over my lips, you know. That journey is such an inner journey for us because we are taught. This is why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because especially around mental illness, we're taught that there's something wrong to be fixed. Mm-hmm. And we want to do good by our children, or for a girlfriend, or for a spouse, or, you know, we want to be helpful. And when we have been indoctrinated into the belief that there is something wrong to be fixed, we will then fall into, well, I need to be the fixer. And it puts so much pressure on us to come up with the right thing. And that's why I was interested in your experience earlier about emotions, because when someone is having feelings and they're upset, we don't need to meet them at the mental level of how to fix it. Even if we have the best ideas, in that moment, when someone is experiencing emotions, they need to be met at the emotional level. Oh, I'm right here for you. It's the feeling of often saying nothing, but they feel like you're giving them a hug, even if you're not touching them. Research shows that what individuals need most when we are in distress is a lifeline, a connection, knowing that we're not alone, knowing that it's safe, knowing that someone else is here, knowing that we're being heard, knowing that we're being seen, knowing that we're being validated. That research shows that is what calms the nervous system. What calms the nervous system isn't the answer to how to go deal with, his friend. That can be a conversation down the line. But what soothes the nervous system is your presence. And so when we feel like we need to fix, we aren't able to embody the feeling of, oh, tell me about it. Oh, that must have been, like you're saying so beautifully, to reflect back to him, oh, ouch, that must have just felt so hard. Or even saying nothing. They know you're here. They feel your presence. It's like giving a hug. I remember once with Will, he came home from school one day. He dropped his backpack. He started, crying, which is very rare, for boys sometimes. He was crying, was so upset about something that had happened at school that day. And I remember I didn't know what to say back to him, but I was for sure in fix it mode in my own mind. I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. What do I say? I honestly didn't know what to say. And it was the most perfect thing that could have possibly happened because I didn't know what to say, I didn't say anything. And he got it out of his system. And then literally he stopped crying. He picked up his backpack and he goes, oh my God, thanks, Mom. You're the best mom ever. And he walked into his room and I hadn't said a word. And that was so epiphanal for me on my journey of learning that it isn't the fixing that matters to the other person, it's the being heard. And so you are really illuminating that today, that if there's one takeaway today, it's take the pressure off of our own shoulders, that there is even something that we need to do to fix in that moment. Yes, there are resources. Yes, later you may go have many conversations or you may not with your son about how to handle that at school. He'll come to you or you can go to him. In the moment, what soothes our nervous system is being heard, being seen, the feeling of being held. And so that is just a lovely example that you leave everyone with. Is there anything else that you would like to leave anyone with just to feel complete? Clearly, we could talk for hours about this and we will have many more conversations about it. And then also, where can people find you? Which I will have on the show notes, of course, but.
No, I just, I think the one thing I would just remind people is just to find that safe person, find that one person in your life, that you can talk to, because we've all been there, and every mom, every dad, every teen out there is struggling with something.
And hopefully come back week after week here, because this is my intention. My intention is to create this to be a very safe sanctuary, like private space for everyone, where you can come and you can feel like, oh, I'm not alone, like this is a lifeline. So it's part of my intention for doing the whole podcast. So I'm so in agreement with you. It is the safety that is imperative, So sorry to interrupt you, but
no. And just, I don't want anyone to feel like they have to walk this journey alone.
Exactly.
And the more we talk about it, the more we reduce the stigma. It just needs our voices. And that's why I was so happy to have been asked by you, because the more we can talk about it, it just gives other people permission to talk about it too. Exactly. So that's really what I want people to hear from me. But yes, so you can find me at Joye at joyemadden.com. It'll be in the notes, I think. And please, I can be that safety. I can be that ear for someone, whoever needs it. It's a hard journey, but you don't have to be alone.
You have and are that safe space for me often. So I can attest. And I always say to my coaches that your greatest credential is your own transformation. And I have literally witnessed you transform from someone who, like you said, maybe a year or two ago, you wouldn't have come on, much less had the courage to walk the walk that you're walking right now. And so I know emphatically that it is your own transformation that is the powerful foundation for someone else who will be calling you, because you walk it. You have been walking it and you continue to walk it every day. So your own transformation is your greatest credential for everyone, who will find you. So thank you so much for being here. I love you. I adore you. I love talking about this conversation. I love being any part of having it be more open and out there. And if anyone listening, you have questions, please write, email either Joy, find her on social media, you'll see in the show notes, or email me at podcast@suzilula.com. We will come back, continue to answer your questions. So know that you are not alone, and may this be your lifeline. So be sure to give yourselves permission to thrive this week. Much love, everyone, and see you next week. So we have been talking about safety, about speaking openly, about the different things that are going on for us. And you were speaking about finding your own voice. And I'm wondering if you would share with everyone. I just think this example is so poignant because it's such an everyday example. But the example you told me about when you were in your son's therapist office, do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And I just think it would speak to everyone, because these examples are happening all day long. And do we even see how we're railroading over ourselves sometimes? So.
Yeah, I remember exactly what you're talking about. And as I share it, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. But yeah, so we were in a therapy session with my son, and he was leaving, and my husband we needed to stay and talk to his therapist about something. And I wasn't quite on board with what that conversation was going to be. So I got up to excuse myself and go to the bathroom to try to get out of the room. And I remember so vividly putting my hand on the doorknob and him just saying, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to use the restroom. He was like, close the door. No, you're going to sit here and have this conversation. And I think, Susie, I might have even said it twice. But that was the pattern that I fell into with him. Again, it's back to those rules, you're going to do what I say. And I'm trying to just have compassion with myself right now, as you say that to me all the time, is having compassion for that part of me that didn't have my voice. And that, looking back, if I could do it over again, is to say, you can start the conversation, but I had to go to the bathroom, it's okay. You can start this conversation, but I'm going to go to the bathroom. I have that right. And in that moment, I didn't feel like I had the right to go to the bathroom because someone was telling me that I couldn't. And that was how I grew up.
Yeah.
Do as you're told, and you don't go outside of that line or there's trouble.
Yeah, that's why I really wanted, and thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing that so authentically. And that's why I really wanted everyone listening to be able to hear. And I have such compassion for you, and we all need to have compassion for ourselves, right? Because you were raised in a particular way that said, be a good girl, do as you're told. And then cut to, you're in a situation where you're trying to be true to yourself, but then there's that old internalized indoctrinated voice, be a good girl, do as you're told. And so you self-abandoned yourself in that moment to be a good girl. And that has been such a part of your healing journey, is about giving yourself permission to take up your own space, giving yourself permission to have your own voice, even if someone else doesn't like it, even if someone else is going to wave their finger at you, even if someone else has a different idea of who you should be, right? And I admire you and acknowledge you and have so much respect for you, because you are on that journey from self-abandonment to self-support.
Yeah. And I want to make sure everybody hears that, because you've used the word self-abandonment twice, and you say that to me often. And I was abandoned as a child. I was abandoned by my parents. And I have to be the one to show up for myself, because if I abandon myself, who's going to take care of me? And I just thought of that as you were sharing that, that, yeah, I need to say that to myself all the time.
Yeah. And that's why we have such respect and compassion for anyone and everyone on this journey, and why we're a voice here. And we keep saying over and over today, you are not alone, because that journey from having felt abandoned and experienced abandonment and the trauma that encapsulates, to learning how to be present for yourself, is such a courageous journey. So anyone on that journey, we want to reiterate, you're not alone. There are lifelines, there's support, but that is the greatest journey an individual can make, in my humble opinion, is how to live the life that you have come here to live the life that Joy came here to live, whether or not someone else likes it or not, and to give yourself that permission to thrive and to break out and to break free from any of the old stigmas, and to say, no, this is me. This is how I came to live my life. This is the life I came to live, and to give yourself permission to live it. So thank you for sharing that example. It's such a great example. I'm sure that many will relate. I loved Joy's example of writing the 10 sticky notes and putting them on her daughter's mirror. And as we leave today, I'm wondering if we can do our own sticky note process. So if you're willing to perhaps close your eyes, maybe place your hand on your own heart, and just listen for the sticky note that you are meant to write to yourself today. What are you meant to write on a sticky note to yourself today? Maybe you're meant to write, you are enough exactly as you are. Maybe you're meant to write that you are worthy, that you are deserving of love, that you are deserving to take up space, that you are here to have a voice for yourself, that you are here to be fully self-expressed. Maybe you're meant to write, I see you. I'm here for me. Whatever it is that you're meant to write on that sticky note to yourself, take a moment, listen. As it comes to you, set your intention to write that sticky note to yourself, place it on your mirror or somewhere where you will be able to receive the message all week. And remember to give yourself permission to thrive this week. Much love, everyone, and see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. If there was something in this conversation that spoke to you, we'd so appreciate it if you would take the time to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with women and mothers you know, because you are here to thrive. See you next time.